Hi, I'm Gael, and in this video I will try to help you decide if the Te Araroa is a trail you should hike. The Te Araroa, which means the long passway in Maori, is a 3,000-kilometer trail in New Zealand. It goes from Cape Reinga at the very north all the way to Bluff down south. It was designed by Jeff Chappell, officially opened in 2011 and still is a work in progress. In 2009 and 10, I was living in New Zealand, and on the trails I was hiking then, I would often see signs that said, "This is part of Te Araroa, a trail that will cover the length of New Zealand," which of course captured my imagination and fascinated me. So when I was back in 2011 and saw the trail inauguration on TV, I just knew I had to do it. So 3 years later, I completed the trail, which was my first long distance one, and I haven't really stopped since. One of the most obvious advantages of the TA is that it's one of the only long distance trails that can be done during the Northern Hemisphere winter. There's also the Florida Trail and, well, can't really think of another one. Because there's plenty of time for you to finish the trail before winter, if you have the time and can afford it, the Te Araroa is a trail where you can take your time, as opposed to some other long trails that have a shorter seasonal window, like the Pacific Crest Trail. New Zealand has an absolutely amazing hut system, and if there aren't a lot of them on trail on the North Island, you could almost sleep every night in a hut on the South Island. Though obviously, since the trail became really popular, that's actually not possible, and you would definitely need to carry a shelter. Before starting your hike, you will need to register and pay a $60 fee. And to be able to stay in the huts along the trail, you have to buy a trail pass. The North and the South Islands offer two very different hiking experiences. The South Island is way less populated, and it definitely feels more like a wilderness experience than the North Island. I know that a lot of hikers don't like the North Island, but I personally enjoyed it and still would recommend it. You do go through most cities, towns and farmland, and there's quite a bit of road walking involved, but there's something fascinating about walking across an entire country, and I think that's how this trail should be looked at. A way to discover an amazing country on foot rather than a full-on wilderness experience. I had a great time walking the North Island, and there are definitely a lot of amazing sections there. The Te Araroa, having still quite a bit of road walking, it doesn't have the same purist culture that, say, the Triple Crown trails have, which can bring antagonism between people that are purists and hike every single kilometer of the trail and people who hitch the road sections. The TA famously has a canoe section on the Wanganui River, which is beautiful, and it's just great to do something different for a few days and walk different muscles. And one great thing about the Te Araroa is that Camino aside, it has by far the most international crowd of any long-distance trails. One thing specific to the Te Araroa is the incredible diversity of landscapes you go through. You'll see beautiful beaches, farmland, rainforest, mountain ridges, spectacular lakes, fjords, green-colored rivers, and more. I hiked the TA in 2014-15, 3 years after it opened, and back then it was a very quiet trail, with only 210 people completing the trail, which of course is not the case anymore. In 2018-19, 1,200 hikers completed the trail, and the numbers are still growing. On the North Island, I spent at least a month and a half without bumping into another TA hiker, which must sound crazy to someone who hiked it recently. And on the South Island, that I did with my then girlfriend, 4 times out of 5 we'd be the only ones at the huts we stayed at. My understanding is that now the huts are always full. It definitely became a popular trail and you won't be alone out there. The Te Araroa in its entirety is very much a southbound trail. If you're planning to hike both islands, it doesn't really make sense to go northbound. First, it would be pretty anticlimactic, but most importantly, you really reduce your chances of good weather, which is definitely not something you want to do in New Zealand. And once you get to the North Island, you will see zero through hikers because nobody going Nobo hikes the North Island. I would say that the best time to start will be early November, which is when I started, and I was extremely happy with the decision. If you're a fast hiker, you can reasonably push your starting date till mid-December, but I would not recommend starting in October. You might get lucky and get away with it, but your chances of getting bad weather, high rivers, and a lot of mud are much higher. I remember reading on the Facebook group about people who started a few weeks before me that were having a horrible time with a lot of rain and thunderstorms when I had great weather. Though it is also fair to say, this is New Zealand and you should not expect good weather and be happy if it happens. But you might as well have the odds in your favor and not start too early. When it comes to a good time to finish, I'd say it doesn't really matter that much. It's not like the PCT or CDT where you really need to be done by a certain date. Your chances of good weather down south are pretty low anyway, so no need to rush. Before doing the TA, I've been to Bluff on 2 different summers, and saying it looked nothing like summer is an understatement. For people doing only the South Island and going Nobo, I'd say that mid-January would be ideal. Clearly, for a solo hiker, the first week is the most difficult of the whole trail. And the most important piece of advice I'd give to someone starting the TA is to take it easy on 90 Mile Beach, which is actually not 90 miles long, but 90 kilometers, so that's 55 miles. It's a little bit confusing, I know. Walking 90 kilometers on a beach is probably not something you've ever done or will ever do again. And it can be extremely painful to walk on sand for so long. I basically arrived in Haipara limping and had no choice but to take a zero. I later met someone who had to stop hiking for 2 months after 90 Mile Beach. So yeah, I'd say it's a smart move to take it easy when starting any long trail, but even more so on this trail. Then you go across 3 forests, the middle one being the infamous Rater. Yep, Rater is just horrible. Most of the time it's just an endless ocean of mud where you trip over roots and get caught in vine. From memory it takes 7 to 9 hours to go through it, and if I remember correctly there is no water source in the forest. So yeah, after that first week it kind of feels like you're cruising. As I mentioned, the weather in New Zealand can be challenging. It rains a lot. I once spent the 3 summer months hiking in New Zealand, not on the TA, and I had only 15 days where it didn't rain at all. And it is not rare to see some snow in the mountains in summer. On the Te Araroa, it could be usually near Waio Pass in Nelson Lakes or in Arches Pass. And one very important thing you might have already heard of is that there is a hole in the ozone right above New Zealand, meaning you need sunscreen even when you think you don't need sunscreen. You don't need to worry about dangerous animals in New Zealand because there are none. Oh, actually, now that I think of it, you do go across a few fields with bulls, usually young ones, and they can get excited. But there are absolutely no snakes in the country, though there are a few extremely annoying animals. Sandflies. You definitely need some insect repellent because they will drive you nuts. Those are not everywhere. When you do see them, it's usually a lot of them. From memory, the worst for me on the TA was Pelorus River. Mice. I hiked thousands of kilometers in New Zealand before hiking the TA, and I've never really experienced mice problems in huts before. But some years, beech trees mast will provide an abundance of food for rodents, and you end up with a mouse plague, which was the case in 2014-15. I mean, that was really bad. But if you're lucky to be there on a good year, it might not be a problem at all. If what you're used to is PCT-like terrain, be aware that this is not the Te Araroa. And by that I mean it is not an easy-to-walk manicured trail with switchbacks. There is mud, there are a lot of rivers to cross. Well, actually you sometimes end up hiking in the river, which is actually fun. There are ankle-twisting tussocks and roots to trip over. That being said, as New Zealand is where I got into hiking, that's what I was used to, and it didn't bother me that much. But I remember quite a few people complaining about how difficult the terrain was compared to some other trails. So yes, typically you won't move as fast as on a trail like the PCT, so that's something to keep in mind. For hikers who hike 40 to 50 km days on the PCT or CDT, it's really not a realistic goal on the Te Araroa in the long run. It's probably doable, but very difficult. Yes, it is the main drawback of the TA. There is a fair amount of road walking on the North Island, though I personally didn't think it was as horrible as some people make it to be. A lot of people choose to hitch on the road sections, so if you really hate it, you can always skip it. And keep in mind that the TA is a work in progress, and work is being done to keep the trail off-road as much as possible. There are a few useful resources that you can use for the trail. You have of course the trail website, which has maps, trail notes, a free app, and trail updates. You have the Jeff Chappell book, which can give you a good overview of the trail before you start, and you have the Gethook/Farout app, which wasn't available when I did it, but it is now. And if you're looking for a good blog, Wired Hike the TA and a through hiking blog is one of the best out there. You can find the links for all of that in the description below. If you're not from New Zealand, you'll need to apply for a visitor visa that allows you to stay longer than 3 months. There are quite a few very good side trips that can be done right off the Te Araroa. If you're not planning to ever come back to New Zealand, why not make the best of it and explore a bit more? From Auckland, you can take a 25-minute ferry ride to the volcanic island of Rangitoto, which has great views of the city. The loop walk to the summit is 18 kilometers. In Tongariro, you can summit Mount Nararawi, aka Mount Doom in Lord of the Rings. This is an amazing side trip and a lot of people do it for sunrise. And you also have great views from Mount Tongariro. In Nelson Lakes, you can go to Lake Angeles, but you need to book the hut or the campsite well in advance as it's pretty popular. From Outer Space Village, you can climb up Avalanche Peak. It's a big 1100 meters climb that takes between 6 and 8 hours, but you get great views. Just after leaving Wanaka, you can climb Royce Peak, which has one of the most famous postcard views of New Zealand. It takes about 5 hours there and back. From Queenstown, you can climb up Battlenomon, which has great views of Lake Wakatipu and takes 6 to 8 hours return. And after leaving Queenstown for the northern end of Lake Wakatipu, you can easily reach the Worldbound Track or the Restart Track. Both are not accessible from the TA directly, but are not very far. And if you hike the Restart Track, make sure to do the amazing side trip to Cascade Cedar. And from Tiano, you could do the Cape Rock Track. Tiano is also not on trail, but hikers usually go there to resupply. Those last 3 trails, the Roadburn, Restart and Cape Rock tracks, are multi-day trails and they're not covered with your dock hut pass, so you need to book the huts or campsites on the dock website. A lot of people doing the TA think of going on a hike on Stewart Island afterwards, since you can hop on the ferry in Bluff, and while it's a fantastic idea, keep in mind that there's a solid chance that by the time you finish the TA, it will be too late in the season to hike on Stewart Island. The island sees a lot of rain and is quite famous for having knee-deep, sometimes waist-deep mud, but if you still have the energy and are lucky with the weather, go for it! Though I wouldn't bother going there just to hike the Rakura Track, which is a bit boring. The 11 days Northern Circuit is amazing. Definitely one of my favorite trails in New Zealand. Not that it's the most spectacular one, but it really has a magical end-of-the-world quality. There's also a fantastic side trip to Mount Anglem that you can do in a day. And doing this trail is probably the only way for you to see a kiwi bird in the wild. You will probably meet people claiming they've seen kiwi birds, but unless they hike the Northern Circuit, it's pretty much impossible. And it's probably just them trying to convince themselves they saw one when they actually saw a weka or some other random bird. Unlike in the mainland, the Stewart Island kiwi is diurnal, which means you have a really good shot at spotting one on this trail. Mason Bay is usually a pretty good spot to see some. I lived in Wellington for a year, and it's hands down the best place I lived in. It's a small city, but it packs a lot, and it's definitely worth spending a day or two there. When you are on the Queen Charlotte Track, which is the northern section of the South Island, you can easily walk to some bars that have some of the best views you'll ever get with a beer. Just look out for signs indicating hotels or any form of lodging, and there is usually a bar to go with it. Both Hanmer Springs and Tekapo have hot springs, so they are really good places to take a zero and rest your sore legs. There is a misconception that trail names are a long-distance trail thing. They are not. They are an American long-distance trail thing. Different countries have different hiking cultures, and it is definitely frowned upon to have a trail name on the TA. It was the case when I hiked it, and after asking people who hiked it recently, it's still the case, though some people do it, it's considered a bit cringe. If you want to save some money, you can take a zero in a hut. With my then girlfriend, we did it a couple of times when we brought jig puzzles and a bottle of whiskey. Those puzzles are probably still there if you want to keep yourself busy for a day. We left one in Hamilton Hut in Outer Space and a second one in one of the huts between Wanaka and Queenstown, one of the Shania Twain huts. If you ask any thru hiker what their favorite long-distance trail is, there is a solid chance that you'll get the same answer from everybody. The first one. For me, it was the TA, so it will always be my favorite. Even more so because New Zealand is the place where I fell in love with hiking in the first place. and I would love to hike it again someday to see how the trail has changed. I'm thinking maybe 15-20 years after the first one, and I know that it will be a very different experience considering the trail's popularity, so that makes it even more interesting. That's it. I hope you found this video useful. If so, you can help this channel by simply subscribing and like this video. If you have any question, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching and happy trails!